Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing to the TV Confidential podcast, or better yet, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or wherever you listen to our podcast.
Hello, this is Robert Wagner, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television. Very happy to welcome back Miss Stefanie Powers. Stefanie Powers, the legendary actress, author, and philanthropist known around the world for her starring role opposite Robert Wagner in the long-running ABC adventure series Heart to Heart. Both calendar year 2024 and the 2024-2025 television season marks the 45th anniversary of the premiere of Heart to Heart on television. We'll ask Stefanie about that. Stefanie Powers, also the founder and president of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, a nonprofit organization that Stefanie established in 1982 in memory of her longtime life partner that continues and furthers William Holden's conservation work in East Africa. Earlier this fall, the United Nations honored Stefanie Powers as an agent of change in recognition for her work with the William Holden Wildlife Foundation. She is also featured in a new eBook called Vision for the Future, which we'll tell you more about in just a second. Stefanie Powers, welcome back to our program.
Thank you. I'd rather call myself a conservationist than a philanthropist because I'm in the front lines. Philanthropy usually means that you're from a distance you're supporting, and I'm anything but from a distance.
Well, I mean, I know this about you. You spend a good part of your time in East Africa, so you're up. So
yes, I'm a dual resident of Kenya and the United States, and have been ever since we first began the William Holden Wildlife Foundation. You know, Bill had created the first ever game ranch for the preservation of species in 1959. Before anybody had the word conservation in their vocabulary, let alone the idea of extinction. At its height, the game ranch had 37 species of East African wildlife in breeding groups, sort of nucleus breeding herds on this 2,000 acres of land that he purchased. And sadly, 5 of those species are no longer visible in the wild. So what he had always wanted to do was to build a wildlife education center for local people to learn about the precious biodiversity and these iconic World Heritage animals that are local to Kenya and East Africa. And so after his death, I formed the William Holden Wildlife Foundation to actually create that education center. And we have been serving over the years. We got our IRS status in 1982 as a public charity, and therefore donations are tax deductible. And our main education center services and has it for many years, 11,000 students a year who come to us for free. And we have an outreach program in extremely rural areas, 7 of them, where we serve an additional close to 6,000 people in communities.
You can learn more about the William Holden Wildlife Foundation by going to whwf.org. Very easy to remember, whwf.org. You can also follow the William Holden Foundation on Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube. I was surprised to read this, and yet I wasn't surprised after I had a chance to think about it. Stefanie, Holden never publicized his work as a conservationist.
No, he was a very private man, and in those days, things that were important to you and things you wanted to be seriously considered for, and that your work be seriously considered for, was not put out in the public. Bill was very conscious and self-conscious of ever using the work that he did in Kenya as a means of personal publicity. Obviously, society has changed a great deal since then. Mm-hmm. Hardly anything is private. We know that the Internet has made all of our lives transparent to such an extent that we have no privacy. We have no personal information that we can rest assured remains personal. it's very scary time. So in speaking about this and his work, I'm actually crossing the line that he wanted to keep about it being something that he referred to personally as his greatest work, way over and above anything he did on the screen.
But in so doing, you are extending his legacy.
Well, it's a living legacy, which is everything it should be, because education changes, it adapts, and we are answering questions that people have in an area of the world where life is changing very rapidly, and the values of the old days or the lifestyle of the old days have to change and accommodate all of these changes. It doesn't make me happy to see people who lived in a tribal way have to change and leave off all of their tribal traditions. But unfortunately, that's what modern life does. It tends to want to homogenize the world and leave off anybody who doesn't adapt by changing their entire lifestyle. So we try to at least accommodate their transitions by affording them some options as well as some information that might help them adjust.
Stefanie Powers is on the line with us. Stefanie Powers, the actress known around the world as Jennifer Hart on Heart to Heart, and the founder and president of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, nonprofit organization that Stefanie established in 1982 that continues and furthers the conservation work of William Holden in East Africa. For more information on the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, WHWF.org, WHWF.org. You can also follow the foundation on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The United Nations honored Stefanie Powers earlier this year as an agent of change in recognition for her work with the William Holden Wildlife Foundation. She is also featured in a new eBook called Vision for the Future, capturing inspiring stories from leaders and changemakers, a new anthology that profiles 25 visionaries who are not only making a significant impact in their respective fields, but are dedicated to making the world a better place through hope, action, and lasting change. Vision for the Future is available for free as an ebook at visionforthefuture.ai. Congratulations on being honored by the United Nations.
Oh my God, you've said it all. Fabulous. I should have recorded that. That would have been a perfect explanation. You've done it perfectly. Thank you. I feel very blessed to have been included with this group of people. Everybody in this that's being recognized is in different fields, but all of the fields which benefit either humanity or science or nature in important ways, and ways that should be well known to anybody who's interested in those particular endeavors. We're all so busy working in the field that we have a very difficult time actually getting out and making sure that people recognize what we're doing. So thank you by affording me the opportunity to speak to you and therefore your audience, to hope that they will maybe look at our website, and if there's anything there that interests them, that they will respond, and that it will be something that they can see as a contribution for the future.
Your interest in wildlife stems from a very, very young age, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I was raised by a stepfather who bred racehorses, and as a child, everybody wants a horse. He believed in tough love, but I must say that I'm very grateful for the way in which he taught me certain values, which, in particular, the value and the responsibility of taking on the life of a horse or a dog or a cat or any companion animal that you bring into your life, that it's a commitment. And so he took me to a slaughterhouse. I didn't see animals being slaughtered. I didn't hear anything or see anything. I just saw all of these beautiful horses waiting to go in and become dog meat. And, he said this: if you don't take the full responsibility, this is where they might wind up. Well, that was a big lesson to me, and I have never sold a horse, and I've rescued a lot of horses. I seem to be over-horsed. I've got 14 horses, and actually 15, one which I rescued from a kill shelter, a kill auction in Texas, who is now living at a wonderful rescue in near Tyler, Texas, where he is having the best life he could possibly imagine. So as long as I can afford to support him, he will be in great shape.
Are you a horse whisperer, or are you able to communicate with horses in a way that most people can't?
Well, I think everybody can to a certain degree, as long as you forget about yourself and you think about the animal and think about what the dynamics of that creature are and what their behavior represents. It's all available to learn, and the reward is tremendous. Communication with animals and what they give us is palpable. You can actually, there are medical measurements for what happens to blood pressure when you're stroking a dog or a kitten or a rabbit or something that is giving you also this wonderful comfort and love. So I think there's a lot to learn from the natural world and in particular our fellow species.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.
Hi, this is Harry Shearer, and you are listening to TV Confidential, a radio show about television.
This is my daughter, Feather. Because of my influence and guidance, she was inspired to become a lawyer.
This is my father, Harry. I hired him as an investigator for my law firm to keep him out of trouble.
Stefanie Powers is on the line with us. Stefanie Powers, the actress known around the world as Jennifer Hart on Heart to Heart. 2024-2025 television season marks the 45th anniversary of Heart to Heart on television. Stefanie Powers is also the founder and president of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, WHWF.org, nonprofit organization that Stefanie established in 1982 that continues and furthers the conservation work of William Holden in East Africa. And you talked about how your love and awareness and a desire to protect animals stems from when you were a young girl, and you also developed a sense for you had sort of a cosmopolitan upbringing. You always were aware of the greater world around you as opposed to just the world you grew up in.
I like to think that, yes. I've always been I've been an avid traveler, and I look back on all the risk-taking I did in my early life to go to exotic places, and many of those places are no longer safe to go to, and I feel blessed that I took the chance and went to some of those places. They're very inaccessible and sometimes very uncomfortable, but lots of bugs. But at the end of the day, I was able to see people and ways of life that have since either disappeared or been compromised heavily.
The last time I spoke to you, I had read your book, One from the Heart, and I made a note from that book. I don't remember whether you learned this from Holden or whether this is something you cultivated yourself. But we're talking about traveling.
Yes.
You're not someone who, quote unquote, goes on vacation because the idea of a vacation is frivolous. You're someone who travels with purpose, even if you're traveling to a place to relax. I mean, I like the idea of traveling with purpose.
Well, it's always been something I was interested in. I'm not someone who can sit by a pool with a daiquiri. So that's never. That really isn't something I'm interested in. In my spare time, I want to have an adventure. So that's the way I've always looked at spare time.
What first sparked your interest in Africa, and what first sparked William Holden's interest in Africa?
Well, for anybody who's interested in the natural world and in the history of the world and in places that are off the beaten track, I think East Africa, because of wildlife in particular. I think people think today, whenever I speak to some people about our work in Kenya, people always say to me, I'm dying to go on safari in Africa. They don't know where. They'll realize that the continent of Africa is so multifaceted that it's huge, and I think the United States can fit into the continent of Africa 2 or 3 times. And there is sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa and all of the tribal diversity that is so fascinating, the racial and tribal diversity. It's an extraordinary thing to study and learn and experience. In addition to the iconic wildlife, because we only think about going to Africa to see giraffes and rhinos and things that we would only see in a National Geographic's documentary. But the people are fascinating, and the people are a great resource that has a tremendous potential, and the potential to do with their natural resources good things rather than some of the bad things that have always been done in the developing world. And it's part of I've always thought that it's part of our responsibility to be responsible to the survival of the planet. That's always been in my vocabulary and in my emotions. And I think it's something that we all, individually and collectively, obviously, can do something about. And it's as simple as for the young ladies who are listening, looking at the labels of the clothes you buy, because if it's got miracle fabrics in it with lots of spandex, it's never going to biodegrade in a landfill. It's a petroleum product. And those things don't disappear. Like your sports shoes, just because you've, worn them out and thrown them out, please be responsible for where they're going, because they're never going to disappear. A few years ago, there was something that really impressed me and left an indelible impression on my brain, which was that you remember the war in Bosnia, the war with the Serbs and the Bosnians and all of that, with the former Yugoslavia. The mass graves that were dug up only a few years ago found, of course, decomposed bodies, but none of the clothing had decomposed. The sport shoes were intact. The miracle fabric, so-called clothing, was intact. That's a message we need to get out. That's a message we need to learn, so that when we're purchasing something that we're going to wear and then discard, we need to be responsible.
Yes, and it takes, as a friend of mine likes to say, it takes one person to say, no, it's wrong to dispose of something that is not biodegradable because of the effect it has on the planet. So if enough people say, no, we shouldn't do that, then eventually it's going to become the norm.
Well, let us hope. Let us hope that some of the people that are listening will put that into practice and be responsible for the bottles that they drink from in their bottled water, and making sure that everything is actually recyclable and demanding. I've always thought that we should, I'm a rebel, so I always thought that we should demand of Apple and Samsung and everybody who produces all of the insatiably consumable products that we seem to have new versions of every time there is one, that they be forced to be recycling bits and pieces and at least 50 to 60% of these products, which they make instantaneously obsolete with the next version of the product. That's also something we can demand as consumers, because nobody's had the courage to demand that of Apple. No government, no environmental movement, nothing. Can you imagine the refuse that comes out of Apple stores? The refuse that comes from the instantaneously obsolete connecting wires that they change every time they give you a new version of an Apple phone, and you have to buy all the gear that goes along with it.
Yep.
I hope that resonates with your audience and brings to light something that we really desperately need to make them responsible for.
Stefanie Powers is on the line with us. Stefanie Powers, actress, author, rebel, and working conservationist. working conservationist. She is also the founder and president of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, WHWF.org. Stefanie will be back next week for part 2 of our conversation. Among other things, we'll talk about some of her movie and TV roles, including co-starring with Harold Gould on Feather and Father. Plus, of course, we'll ask her to share a few memories of working with Robert Wagner on Heart to Heart. Please join us next week for part 2 of our conversation with Stefanie Powers. In the meantime, Stefanie is one of the 25 visionaries who are recognized in the anthology eBook Vision for the Future, capturing inspiring stories from leaders and changemakers. Stefanie is recognized for her work with the William Holden Wildlife Foundation. Vision for the Future, the anthology ebook, is available for free at visionforthefuture.ai. For more on the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, WHWF.org. You can follow Stefanie Powers on Facebook and on Instagram. We'll continue our celebration of the 25th anniversary of The Sopranos on television when we come back on TV Confidential. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing to the TV Confidential podcast, or better yet, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or wherever you listen to our podcast.
Life can be full of risks. One thing you shouldn't take a risk with ever is your family's health insurance. If you're self-employed or you now need affordable health insurance, you need to make this free call right now and see how the Health Insurance Helpline can help you get it.
800-365-4216. 800-365-4216. 800-365-4216. That's 800-365-4216.